Booga booga.
To start, if you like the other Deadpool movies, then you'll like Deadpool and Wolverine. However, don't think too hard about much of anything actually going on in the film, otherwise it won't hold up too well. It's got the guns, guts, and humor you'd expect from a film like this, of course, with the added bonus of Wolverine being in the picture. So if that's what you're looking for, you won't be disappointed. The story revolves around Deadpool enlisting the help of a reluctant Wolverine to help save his timeline from being destroyed. The acting was mostly good, the action was over the top, and the story was goofy as hell. Obviously, Reynolds and Jackman slip into their roles effortlessly and, for the most part, are able to play off one another really well. So, good job. Also, for all the crude humor in the Deadpool movies, the serious moments hit home, and this most recent entry is no exception. At the end of the day, Deadpool wants to have value and do something meaningful, and that is a through line that exists throughout the film, a sort of creeping chink in the armor. Jackman's Wolverine plays off of Deadpool's insecurities relatively well, in particular in a very cutting monologue delivered by an irate Wolverine. Of course, Jackman is able to play the tortured soul just as well as ever, so the emotional depth of the movie, when it is allowed to ride, is suitably poignant. And perhaps it's because I'm married, but the tension between Deadpool and Vanessa was a gut punch. It's worth mentioning, however, missed opportunities, specifically the reuniting of the original Sabretooth played by Tyler Mane with Jackman's Wolverine. No offense to Liv Schreiber, but he's not Sabretooth. Nostalgia aside, Mane's Sabretooth is a highlight memory for me when I think of the original X-Men. In fact, I would say he's the perfect blend of comic book and grounded film adaptation. I loved his look, the aesthetic of his claws, and the sound design when he growled and roared was perfect. So, naturally, I got excited, if not somewhat confused, when he was revealed in one of the trailers. I won't spoil what happens, but it's brief and underwhelming. Obviously, the film doesn't center around Wolverine and Sabretooth going at it, so perhaps it's not wise to have a protracted conflict, but the alternative is demeaning. Yes, I'm aware I'm bringing good and poor taste into a critique of a Deadpool movie. It would have been better to simply leave this altercation out altogether. That or work the conflict into the story proper in a way that's organic. This isn't going to spoil anything if you've seen the trailers, but a lot of the turmoil surrounding Wolverine has to do with his failures as an X-Men. Would it have been difficult to have Sabretooth be the impetus for those failings? I don't think so, and then we could have had a suitable rematch. This is an individual gripe, I understand. Surely many people will have no problem with how this situation resolves, but if we're being fair, surely we can all agree that there's something more that could have been done. Tyler Mane's inclusion in this film pivots into another point: the cameos. There are an exhausting number of cameos in this film. Why does that annoy me? Because they serve no narrative purpose. They are literally shiny moments. Again, without going too far into spoilers, there are characters who make appearances from Fox's old Marvel films. Really, the only film franchise that was missing was Spider-Man. I imagine that's because we already did that in No Way Home. I also think that people would be understandably infuriated if they went anywhere near that content again. All this being said, is Deadpool the savior of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? No. Far from it. As a matter of fact, taken at face value, this movie is fine, but that's about it. Let's be real, we all knew what we were getting into when we saw the announcement video released by Reynolds. Again, Deadpool fans will love this film, but I wasn't entirely sold. The main issue is I find it hard to properly critique something like this, and not because there's layers of complexity and nuance. No, the main issue is this film is self-aware, giving it leeway to otherwise laugh at and mock certain elements of writing and plot that people like me would normally take to task. In one sense, this could be seen as a plus for the movie, a sort of self-deprecating humor, but the elements that are made fun of are still prevalent and major to the story, so they can't just be ignored. This begs the question, how critically does one be with a movie like Deadpool? Surely we can't view this film through the same lens we view a film like Saving Private Ryan. They're completely different pieces of content. But at what point does it become cheap to make fun of dumb concepts like the multiverse without actually doing something about it? Is it simply enough to shrug and say it's a fun movie? Perhaps for some, and you wouldn't hear an argument from me. For those who opt for a more discerning eye, I wouldn't argue with you either. I hope you're starting to understand the problem I'm having with this. I want to treat all film equally, but how the hell do you do that with a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine? If this had been any other movie, I genuinely don't think it would have held up particularly well. For those who see the movie, remove Deadpool from the plot and replace it with anyone in the MCU, and this film would likely fall flat on its face. People would likely look at the plot and roll their eyes, and look at the number of cameos and think the writers couldn't come up with anything else, so they needed to include as much key jangling as possible. But by virtue of the fact that it's Deadpool, by virtue of the fact that it's Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, by virtue of the fact that the people who created this film aren't self-absorbed half-wits, this film will do well at the box office. If you saw Deadpool and Wolverine, let us know what you thought. Is it MCU's savior, or is it just another movie in a dying franchise in a genre that's becoming increasingly irrelevant? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and hit the like button.
Booga booga.